the latest in a series of insider tell-all books about US President Donald Trump is due out in September. This time, it's from Mr. Trump's former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen. He's been serving a 3-year jail sentence for Trump campaign finance violations, but was released into home detention in May because of COVID-19 concerns. Early this month, he was rearrested after tweeting that his book was nearly finished. But last week, a judge ordered Cohen's release, finding his rearrest was in retaliation for writing the book. Jeffrey K. Levine is Mr. Cohen's lawyer and joins me from New York. Welcome to RN Drive.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Glad to be here.
How significant is the judge's ruling ordering Michael Cohen's release?
It's very significant at a number of different levels. First, for my client, obviously now he can continue working on his book, and that's important for him to share with the general public. It's something that he's been looking forward to sharing for some time. And now that he's out of prison, he's able to continue to work and finish the book. It's also a source of income, frankly, for him at some point. And obviously, being out of prison and not being retaliated against gets him back in his home confinement, which is where he should have been starting July 9th when we were transitioning from furlough. It vindicated our claim that what was presented to us on July 9th, I was there in the room with him in the Southern District's United States Probation Office, and that what was presented to us was a violation of Mr. Cohen's First Amendment rights, and ultimately that he was unlawfully imprisoned.
In his ruling, the judge noted that in 21 years of being a judge and sentencing people, he had never seen such a clause barring media engagement as part of a supervised release agreement. Is this completely unheard of?
When everything happened and I left the courthouse, I have not been a judge, but in my almost 30 years of practice, I'd never seen any language like that either. And I heard time and time again from other lawyers, colleagues, and now Judge Hellerstein, that nobody's ever seen anything like this ever. So, yeah, this was really unprecedented language as far as our common experiences. The judge, in his decision, you can interpret, and I leave it to your listeners to do as they wish, but my interpretation was that as a result of the court's ruling that this was retaliation from above, I would submit that Michael Cohen could be the first U.S. citizen political prisoner on U.S. soil in American history.
Federal prosecutors have denied that Michael Cohen's rearrest was about the book. They say he was antagonistic towards probation officers and refused to sign a home confinement agreement. What's your response to that?
Well, I mean, I didn't think they were going to roll over, although frankly, they should have resolved this early on. Even before I spoke to the press on the courthouse steps, I asked to try and resolve this with the person at the Bureau of Prisons who signed the order to remand Mr. Cohen back to prison. But that didn't happen. And so what actually unraveled was fascinating from a legal standpoint. The Bureau of Prisons issued, over a period of those 2 weeks, 3 different press statements, all saying different reasons why he was remanded back. The first 2 never mentioned anything about being antagonistic or that he was a problem during the meeting. And I can tell you, I was there. I was his lawyer at that meeting. He was not antagonistic at all. We were simply asking questions and making inquiries as to what the parameters of the terms and conditions of his home confinement looked like. So it was such a surprise when we were sitting there in the waiting room at their request to hear whether or not we could adjust some language. And then the marshal showed up an hour and a half later to arrest him. Getting back to what the BOP actually said, first they said that he refused the conditions of his home confinement, that he refused to agree to obtain approval for any media interviews. But as everybody saw, because I took the papers out with me and now are a matter of public record, that wasn't a condition in the terms that were presented to us about pre-approval. It wasn't there. Then they later changed their statement to say he refused to agree to electronic monitoring. That references the ankle bracelet that he would have to wear throughout the remainder of his sentence on home confinement. We never got to that part of the meeting. So at each one of these press statements that the Bureau of Prisons released, it was like it was a head scratcher.
So Earlier in the month, the New York Post published photos showing that Michael Cohen was eating out at a Manhattan restaurant. Was that allowed under his home detention orders? Could that have provoked the arrest?
Well, it's a good question. It's one that I've been asked a lot. And the answer is, according to all accounts, no. In their opposition papers, the government said that it had no role whatsoever. If you want to credit that as their official position, then you have it there in court papers that it had no impact. I think, as a practical matter, it's not what perhaps some members of the public wanted to see. However, as for the legality, he was on, again, what we call furlough here, and the furlough language permitted him to be in the area of his furlough, and the restaurant that he was eating at was on the corner of where he resides.
According to court documents, Mr. Cohen's book will detail racist and anti-Semitic remarks allegedly made by the president. Do you know what else is in the book?
I haven't read it cover to cover. I'm privy to some snippets, but nothing I can share with any specificity. I can say that, unbeknownst to my client, there is going to be an additional, whether it's going to be a chapter or what it's actually going to look like, whether it'll be an author's note or an epilogue or something else. The events that started on July 9th, leading to his imprisonment in, I should remind your listeners, to solitary confinement, where he remained for 16 days. And then Judge Hellerstein's historic ruling now will be added to his book.
Thank you so much for joining us.
You betcha. Thank you.
Jeffrey K. Levine is a legal representative for Michael Cohen, the former lawyer for the US President Donald Trump. This is RN Drive.